Is your life storm-proof? That's my question today. We've been talking about refuge and shelters and things like that. I want to use a few other scriptures today just to conclude this series of videos. Psalm 62 and verse 7, David wrote, "In God is my salvation and my glory, the rock of my strength, and my refuge is in God." David knew that. He faced some difficult times and he wrote lots of psalms, and many of them are about his confidence in God. Here's another one. He stood on the rock. His refuge is in God. Psalm 94 and verse 22. There the psalmist, it's not David this time, "The Lord is my defense, and my God is the rock of my refuge." Now, we know that storms come. It's not if storms come, it's when storms come. And so my next scripture is in the New Testament, in Matthew chapter 7 and verses 24 and 25. Matthew 7, 24 and 25. "Whoever listens to these words of mine and acts upon them will be like a sensible, prudent man who builds his house on a rock. And the rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat upon that house. Yet it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock." Now just go on a couple of verses. "And anyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a stupid fellow who builds his house upon the sand." So if you want to be storm-proof, you've got to know what Jesus said and actually obey it. Not just know about it, but do it. Obey it. In my lounge, I've got a very large picture of a man on a rock. Actually, he's in the entrance of a lighthouse. And the waves are huge. They must have sent a drone or something up there to take the photo. It's a very well-known photo. And this man is just casually leaning there and enjoying the sights of the sea belting up around him and waves everywhere. He's safe, he's secure, he's on a rock. So that's Matthew, that's what Jesus said. Now, our hope in him is like an anchor, just to change the analogy a little bit. Hebrews chapter 6, move you around a bit in the Bible today, find out where books are. Hebrews chapter 6 and verse 18 and 19. Now, sometimes the pages don't turn as quick as I would like to, but Hebrews 6, 18 and 19. Well, let's just read 19. "Now we have this hope, a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul." It's good that our soul is anchored. If you go to the beach and see some boats that have slipped their anchorage, the anchors come up and they're just drifting. I don't want to drift in life. I want to be anchored. We have this hope. You have to go back to verse 18 to find the hope, the promise that God has made and the oath that he's made. Wonderful passage, that, worth a study. Go back and read it. It cannot slip. This anchor of the soul cannot slip, and it cannot break down under whatever comes against it, because it's a hope that reaches farther and enters into the very certainty of his presence within the veil. So this anchor is actually within the presence of God, and that keeps my soul from straying and being blown around by storms. Now, even in a difficult time of pressure, we've got to realize that situations are only temporary. And in Paul's writing to Corinth, this is what he wrote. This is a very important scripture. 2 Corinthians 4:18. If you're in a storm, what are you looking at? Are you looking at the waves? Because they're going to frighten you if you look at the waves. Don't look at the waves. In 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 18, "We do not consider or look at the things that are seen, but we look at the things that are unseen, This anchor in my soul is invisible, but it's there. So we look at that. Don't look at the things which are seen, look at the things which are unseen. For the things that are visible are temporal, brief and fleeting, but the things that are invisible are deathless and everlasting. Things that you can see are subject to change. You can see the curtains on one side of me and you can see it's light. Within a few hours, it'll be dark. It's subject to change. I won't be wearing this nice shirt to go to bed with. I will change. Everything that you can see is subject to change. But things which are unseen, our anchor of our soul, that is steady and eternal, not subject to change. Now we have got to hold on to the truth. A very good example of being storm-proof, and I'll finish with this, is Acts chapter 27. Now in Acts chapter 27, Paul is in the middle of a storm. He sets out on a journey in a ship, and the ship starts off and the south wind was blowing. The south wind was blowing. But when they got going, this starts at verse 13. So if you read in Acts 27, verse 13 to 26, that's the actual passage I'm referring to. Paul was in this boat, and they were having a shipwreck. They were throwing stuff over the side because the wind was so bad, and the ship was tossed around with a tempest. In verse 18, a violent storm. If you're in a violent storm, put your trust in God, because Paul says here he saw an angel. God sent an angel. And although, this is verse 23, there stood by me this night an angel of the Lord, saying, fear not, Paul, you will reach your destination. You will go before Caesar. He was on his way to Rome. So in the middle of a storm, make sure you've obeyed the word that Jesus has told you, and realize there are unseen angels with you who are basically saying, fear not, David, fear not whatever your name is, and just fear not, because we are not able to be moved. We're anchored. We're storm proof. Now join me, it's a good place to be. Storm proof. See you soon.